All right, hello everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us on this beautiful Monday evening. We do have a full house, so if there are any available seats next to you, please make sure to move in or fill in seats. All right, this was a great audience. Thank you all so much for coming out. My name is Amali, and I'm the events director here at Books Are Magic. We are so excited to have Honor Jones and Xochitl Gonzalez with us tonight to celebrate and discuss Honor's breathtaking debut novel, Sleep, a searing examination of one mother's lingering childhood trauma and the thin line women so frequently have to toe in their everyday life between normalcy and horror. There's truly so much to discuss in this book, but before we get started, I just have some logistics to point out, some quick bios to read, and then we're going to dive right in. So first up, we will be doing a hand-raised audience Q&A towards the end of the discussion. So please start thinking of questions to ask and hold on to them. After the talk tonight, Honor will be signing and personalizing books at the alcove next to where you checked in. We'll let you know where and when to start lining up for that. And finally, if you're joining us virtually on the YouTube live stream, we would love to encourage you to buy a copy of Sleep online using the link in the live stream description. Honor Jones is a senior editor at The Atlantic and previously at the New York Times. She lives in Brooklyn with her 3 children. And as I mentioned before, Sleep is her debut novel. And as I also mentioned earlier, Xochitl Gonzalez joins Honor in conversation tonight. Xochitl is the New York Times bestselling author of Anita de Monte Laughs Last and the award-winning novel Olga Dies Dreaming. She's a staff writer for The Atlantic, where she was recognized as a 2023 Pulitzer Prize finalist in commentary. That's all for me. Please join me in giving Honor and Xochitl a very warm welcome.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, congratulations.
Thank you for doing this with me.
No, I'm so excited. Honor edits me at The Atlantic. Honor got me to write in the magazine. I had my newsletter and you were like, you need to write something else. So I'm very happy.
I can't really take credit for that, but I always wanted you to, and I'm so glad you did.
And I was so lucky to have read this book now almost like a year ago.
Yeah, a long time.
Yeah, it was a long time ago, and it was kind of a pleasure to get to go through it again. It's so beautifully, beautifully written. The book is told in one point of view. It's really like just exquisitely written. It's told in Margaret's point of view, but from 2 different phases of Margaret's life. Like one when in the summer when she's 10 years old, and then it kind of picks up again 25 years later, more or less, when Margaret, the adult, is now grappling with the incidents of that summer 25 years before. But it's sort of, you do these really beautiful things where you capture kind of the inner mind of a child in young Margaret, but then you capture the chaos of children in adult Margaret, who's the mother now of daughters. And I just thought like it was just so well done because it's such a tricky thing to do, to revert time, to maybe hear from both of the perspectives, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah. So the book starts with a 10-year-old's sort of point of view, and I guess one thing I'm interested in is she's thinking and feeling things and having reactions to things, but she doesn't really know what's going on. Like all she knows about the world comes from like American Girl doll books. Like she has no idea, she has no context, and so she's trying to figure things out. But she's very perceptive and like seeing things happen, and so trying to walk that line of like knowing the reader knowing what's happening when the character doesn't.
Yes.
And sort of, she's sort of she can be flowery in like a kid way, but she's sort of, the language is pretty simple.
And she observes like adult problems.
Yes.
In this really like sort of beautifully blunt way. Like you get the point. It makes you realize how much children kind of get also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
we think things are sophisticated and like,
she's trying to like make up her reasons for why someone behaves a certain way or does a certain thing, but she also sees what's happening.
Yeah, no, completely. Oh, well, do you mind reading from young Margaret?
Oh,
and then I have questions,
sure.
And then maybe a little bit from Margaret.
Yeah. Okay, this is just the very beginning of the book. It was damp down under the blackberry bush, but Margaret liked it there. She was cozy, like a rabbit. It smelled clean. It was funny how dirt could smell so clean. She couldn't see in the dark which berries were ripe, but she nibbled on one anyway, puckered, spat. She rested her cheek against her arm and looked out across the yard. A whoop and a stampede. The boys were running by. They must have spotted Biddy. The bright spot of the flashlight whirled. It made her dizzy trying to follow it. Hammock, grass, basketball net, grass. The flashlight made a photograph each time it hit something. Little circles of backyard, punched out of time. The light lit the door of the tool shed and stayed there, wobbling. She couldn't tell which boy was which in the dark, but one held the flashlight and one went for the door. Tactics, she thought, impressed. They shouted and knocked over some rakes and buckets, but the shed was empty. Margaret laughed into her elbow. The boys stopped to scheme, and she could see that Danny was holding the flashlight. Danny was her best friend's brother, and so they could almost certainly never fall in love and get married. The boys were making a plan. They had to be more strategic, she could hear Neil, her own brother, saying. She played with a stick in the dirt, making up signs for the fairy people who would come out later, telling them who she was. Here lay Margaret, child of man. The fairies would have tangles in their hair and see-through wings of dusky violet and the pointed toes of Barbies. She didn't believe in fairies, but she liked to pretend.
Oh my gosh, I just love it because it's like even tactics. It's like you could imagine she learned the term tactics like earlier that week.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Like, this is tactics. I love it. Before I ask the question, do you mind reading a little bit from Margaret, then the mom, like dealing with her own kids?
Sure.
Yeah.
From the scene where she's having
yeah, it's kind of great.
So she is a full-grown woman, but she's having a very stupid fight with her mother, which I think is maybe relatable. They're in a train station. Margaret stopped right where she was. Sorry, I'm going to start over. Elizabeth started right where she was, and so Margaret had to stop too. They were in a hurry, but this was more important. Her mother had to have the last word. But Margaret too had to have the last word. She dug her heels into the floor, down into the stone of the station concourse. Commuters in their routine rush streamed around them. The flow splashed through with antic rivulets of anxiety, the dart of men about to miss their trains. But neither Margaret nor her mother moved. Stop shouting at me, Elizabeth said, and come back here. Margaret never shouted, did she? Why was her mother always accusing her of shouting just because she wouldn't give in? She would never give in. She stood as tall as she could. She looked proud and disdainful. She was 10 paces off. She thought of honor and pistols cocked and aimed and blood in the snow. Whatever happened now, she would not walk back to Elizabeth.
I love it. It's like she's fully grown, but then almost actually more immature than when she's lying in the bush.
Yeah, and also her daughters are there watching, and she's like, which is terrible, of course.
No, but also just natural, right? Like, so I think the thing that I was just so enamored with in the beginning of the book, the beginning sections when Margaret is 10 and we meet her, is how difficult it is as a novelist that's had to try and strip away time. How difficult it is to get into a time where you know so much less. And I was so curious, like from a craft and a personal perspective, like how you disciplined yourself to stay in a parameter, but also how much maybe being a mom yourself and being around young kids helped you tap into that, and the process between like kind of cultivating the voice of young Margaret and then other Margaret.
Yeah. I mean, I did have to think about it a lot. Like, would a kid actually like know that word, or that, like, would they have the sentence of that structure of a sentence? But yeah, I mean, I do think kids are really smart, and they have these big concepts that they're trying to work out. And there's a lot in the book where like, you know, kids say the darndest things. There's like funny things that kids say that are like sort of hilarious and like off in the way kids, but like they're also playing with language and like being incredibly creative at the same time. So there's sort of a brilliance to it too. But yeah, it definitely took some like crafting to be like, this is a child, not a grown up. But I think also like the character really, I tried to make her very much like she's one person, and she really, as much as she would like to change, like doesn't change that much. So it did feel like of a piece to me. Like, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think on the other hand, well, I'll get to the ways in which I think, or maybe I'll just skip around actually, since we already introduced her mom. I actually thought one of the things that was so amazing and interesting was how, on the one hand, she stays the same, and on the other hand, she becomes kind of not her mom at all. Like, well, actually, I will go in order. So in the sense that we meet adult Margaret, and I always think that major life events like losing a parent or getting a divorce is like pulling at the thread of a sweater that sometimes we knit for ourselves to just protect things. And we meet Margaret, and she's kind of she's getting a divorce. Okay, like, and this is like the unraveling of the sweater that then exposes all of this stuff. But the impetus for the fight that starts the divorce, like, it's so interesting. Like, it felt very real to me because it's always the randomest thing, but is that she's this magazine editor, or she's an op-ed editor at a magazine, and she's in the height of Me Too. And they're like in a debate about some of the stuff that she's been talking about at work with the friends having dinner. And I sort of just love this way that this big macro thing ends up having all these like micro implications. And I don't know, I was just curious, like, you were working in media at that time. I think you'd said you were on mat leave maybe, but like,
Yeah.
But I'm just curious
many.
how, like, how did this big thing turn into this insight into like the way into this micro thing? And yeah.
Well, there's a few. I mean, one thing in that scene that I thought was like funny or interesting was like,
There's
I think
a
a lot of
that's
people
funny.
have had this experience. The men are being like really great allies in like an impersonal way, and like not as good allies in like an intimate way. And there's also this question of like, they're talking about something that somebody wrote, and the language being applied to it is like not what that person used to describe her own experience, and like that makes this character uncomfortable. But I also think like that's fine. I don't know. I think about that with the book. It's like you describe something, and a reader can read that however they want and like put their own language on it, and like you can't. That's sort of the argument that the man in the story is making at that moment. But I mean, the Me Too stuff was one of the impetuses of the book, because I was on maternity leave when that story broke, the Harvey Weinstein story. But I did edit like a lot of those essays, and I was thinking about it as an editor and just like as a person, like everybody else was in the world. And there were just some things that I felt like you couldn't write an op-ed about, like these things that were like too sort of nuanced, or like you couldn't really defend, but it was like a thought you had that was confusing. And I was like, oh, that's a really good use for a novel. Like, that's not like I couldn't write that for a newspaper, but like there's something there that a different form could address.
I mean, I think we were just talking about this, but like one of the things that I loved about the book is also that it only could get this kind of nuance in novel. And like, I mean, obviously we work at an excellent magazine, the best magazine that's ever magazined. But on the other hand, sometimes a topic can get so flat that you forget that it, not only that it has real people behind the stories, but also that it's shifting the way we're thinking about things in culture. Like, and I think what I loved is like, you think you're getting a nerd, and then it's actually like no, actually, like in my own brain, I've been processing this. In my lizard brain, I've actually been processing all this new information and how it pertains to my life, and suddenly this is bothering me in a different way. And that kind of shift is really interesting.
Yeah, well, I also think like the way we process like news stories as a culture, it's like something happens, then a lot of people respond to it, and then like they respond in like a similar way, and then that becomes its own kind of genre of responses, and you become sort of a nerd to it.
Yes.
So you feel like the floodgates are opening, but it's also like a little bit narrower than it seems, because that's like a certain kind of story is being told a lot.
But also that's the public response,
important.
Right? Like, and it's like, and I think this is super interesting in that it's like, it's not a Me Too book at all, and yet at the same time, it's like the thing that's sort of like, it's like, wait a second, who are you? Like, right? Which I think is just really true, because we're living and reacting to so much information now. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we were talking before about like the things that a culture is like, oh, we talk a certain way, like we're fine with that, and like how a family is like kind of the microcosm of that. Like,
yes,
you grow up and you speak a certain language, and you're like, this is cool, or that's fine, or this is what dad says, or mom's allowed to do, or whatever, and then like you see things differently for some reason later, and you're like, oh, actually that's strange.
yeah. And then do you confront it, or do you just move on and choose to do things differently in your own way, which is a lot of what is going on
definitely in
the book. Well, actually, to that point, I talk about this conversation. You may have just kind of answered my question, but like, what happened in Sleep. So in the early sections, young Margaret is videotaped without her consent by her brother for the amusement of neighborhood boys, amongst other things. But then we meet her again as an adult, and she's literally seeing things in different ways. But her mom is kind of choosing to see everything the same way.
Yes, she's preferring not to.
She's preferring not to. And so, I don't know, one of the things I was thinking about is like, in the context of Mother's Day, I think, no, but like, I think what
Definitely
was,
buy this book for your mom.
buy this book for your mom.
She'll love it.
There's so much to talk about. No, but I think in the context of coming off the heels of Mother's Day, what I thought was interesting is in your wonderful review in the Washington Post, Ron Charles talks about how, like, you know, people might want the story to go into like confrontation and explosion, and that's not actually what goes on. And it's actually, I think, much more interesting and realistic, like what happens. But it felt to me in a weird way like a form of Margaret's love for her mother, like in this interesting and odd way. And I am just curious how you thought about this, like Margaret's acquiescence to like live on the one hand on her own terms, because she divorces her husband and she engages in this totally different kind of relationship, and like it's very well written. We'll just say that. It's very well written. And then, you know, on the other hand, she participates in family functions that make her deeply uncomfortable. She participates in a lot of her mom's lies. And like, I was just curious about how you saw that, and if you saw that as Margaret's a weakness, or if you saw that as an act of love in some weird way.
Interesting. I maybe both. I mean, I think in the book the mother ages, and at a certain point it's like, is it worth, I don't know, is it worth having some confrontation and like having everything out or not? And
yeah,
it's kind of not, but she loves her. And I mean, one of the other things, like, she doesn't tell her best friend about this secret that she has. And I think that's like another example of that, where it's like, it's sad, like she could, it would be fine. Like,
absolutely.
I loved writing this best friend.
Yeah,
like,
she was a great best friend.
Definitely, she would have been fine. Like,
yeah.
But she has this feeling of she wants to protect her, and they like grow up, and they're like, just like a lot of girls, I don't know, like a best friend, you wear the same outfit, and you like want to have the same thoughts about the same events and do everything together, and you don't want to be different. But she has this feeling that if something happened to her, like it would happen to the best friend too somehow, like if she knew. So it is definitely like an act of love, even though it's also a book about like the danger of secrets, I think.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's definitely about the danger of secrets. But like, I also think it's a book about mothering in big ways. And so one of the kind of other questions is, do you think that, so Margaret, you know, her mom is, okay, I have to actually, right. So when we meet Elizabeth, Margaret's mother, when she's 10, 25 years before the fight, the silent fight, the kind of silent fight in the subway. Elizabeth has just come off the heels of an incident. She swallows too many pills. Her husband's had an affair, but like, it's clearly not very well hidden in the household, because young Margaret's very aware that there was an incident, and she stayed in her very well-appointed bedroom. The description of this bedroom is one of my favorite things in the book, and it's like, I just love the bedspreads. It's just all so good. And it's sort of like a problem, but then not a problem. And then, you know, sort of you see her later, and she's still obviously with Margaret's father. And so she loves to look away from the messy things. And then Margaret grows up, and she's kind of this woman that's a little bit obsessed with the messy things. Like, she's like a little bit like a rubbernecker. Like, she's like worried about her children, but then also kind of like a little into the messy things. And I was so curious if you thought that Margaret, and as a parent, their parental styles are completely different. Like, you know, I think that messiness involves like just denial and sort of looking the other way. And Margaret is like too obsessed. Like, yes, too obsessed.
I mean, I think a lot of the book is about like, you don't want to make the same mistake that your parents made, but then you like do the complete opposite, which is its own mistake, and go too far in the other direction. And
well, my question was actually, did you feel that it was a conscious response to Margaret's mother or to the incident? Does that make sense?
Oh, I would say more to the mother.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Because I think the incident like doesn't matter as much as the response to it, basically.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's kind of how kids are. It's like things can happen, but like what happens after sometimes matters more.
Yeah.
So yeah, Margaret as a mother is very like, are you okay? But you also know, like, if you ask a kid if they're okay, like 30 times in a row, like that's stressful for them. Like that's not helpful. So she's trying to like also control that impulse and like that fear in herself.
Yeah. So, and then that's a good segue, which is like, I talked about this. We did a kind of a fun little talk with Sophie about Girl on Girl, but like one of the things that I was thinking about in this book in particular is this idea of protection. And, you know, it does, you get this sense in the family that her brother is a disturbed duck, like, to say the very least. And there's this idea of like, well, obviously he's a disturbed duck. Let's not worry about him. Let's worry about him and protect him and like all these things. And this kind of notion of protection and a mother's role to protect and who she protects. Like, and I just sort of was curious about like your take on that, not just within this context of this family, but in the context of even mothering and having multiple children, because it's like in one household. And so what do you decide to take up? And like, what is an obligation to like, who are you protecting them from then becomes the other question.
Yeah, if you're protecting them from each other.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you do with a violation when it's like complicated by you love and need to protect both parties? I don't know. I think that's sort of an impossible question to answer, but I do think like there's probably a better balance than this mother in the story strikes. But I think about that with my kids, you know, it's like one kid is like attacking the other kid and you have to be like, who's more in trouble?
Right.
And you're probably not making the right decision. Everybody's in trouble. I guess is one solution. But
Yeah. So almost all of the relationships of significance in this novel, Margaret and her mother, her relationship with Biddy, which is really, really lovely, her daughters, the central relationships are all kind of female. And so men are kind of part-time players that are causes of harm and pleasure. And so I just was curious if that was like an intentional choice and sort of that, you know, I don't know, like what was the creative impulse? And like if that was like, I don't know what you got, like was that like a satiating, like fun thing? Because sometimes I write things and I find them really delicious and fun to write. Yeah,
it's definitely a book about women. Like, I wanted this character to get laid, like for sure.
Yeah.
There's a whole chapter that takes place during a blowjob, but it didn't seem like the solution was going to be like for her to get married or something. Like the whole point is like not. So I think, it became, if she's obsessed with her mother, her mother's like got real main character energy. She like is obsessed with her best friend. So, and then the girls. So I think maybe that was just driven by the story, but I did like it.
I mean, I think what I thought was a really awesome thing is that to that point, sometimes when people are raised by somebody with main character energy, Do
you have some experience with that?
It's my favorite day of the year yesterday. Yeah.
Xochitl wrote an amazing story.
No, but sometimes when you're raised by somebody with main character energy, you actually don't become main character energy. And I thought, though, that I hadn't seen a novel in a long time that leads with someone who wants to be an observer. And like, and it was like I thought that the real risky, awesome part about her life is that in making this choice to get, and I wrote this in my blurb, like, you know, you could give a summary of, a Brooklyn mom gets a divorce, and that could be a lot of books. But then this is not that book at all. But part of it is because like she kind of has to then become a main character, right? And like, and you're like, what are all the things that had happened that maybe made her shrink away from that? And like, it's kind of awesome to like have a whole chapter with a blowjob. I don't know, right? Like for this one person.
I mean, she makes like a really dramatic choice, and then that lets her kind of like stake her territory a little bit more. But it's funny because it's like it's a kind of a divorce book, but like you never the divorce doesn't happen in the book. Like,
right.
It's like you sort of see in moments like what led to it a little bit, but like that I was like very uninterested in like explaining or like showing a divorce. I was just like, a lot of things happened before and like a lot of things are going to happen after, and like that's just one of the things.
One of the things that weirdly stayed with me, like when like you read a book and it's a long time ago and then you're like, well, I do remember this, is it's also a book about summer childcare woes. It's like there's a day camp that falls through, and there's like picking kids up and then needing to get out to your Jersey parents. Like it was really like, I was like, this really rang very realistic to me. No,
Yeah.
But no,
That's close to home. That part.
I thought that it just, I really, to me, it's a divorce book and then not, because it was really like a mothering and womaning on one's own terms. Wait, so much of your time at the Atlantic, which is thrilling and invigorating at all moments, is spent is kind of, you obviously have written wonderful pieces, but primarily you edit, and you're like deconstructing other people's stories that are factually true. We're also in the middle of fact checking a feature right now, like very, very factually true. And then you get this opportunity. No, that was actually literally because I spent half the day with Yvonne from fact checking on the phone today.
I was like, you have to stop bothering her
because I'm doing this event and she needs to finish her questions. No, but I was curious, what was it like? What was it like? What were the joys and the challenges of going into fiction like in this way? And how did it like get informed by or like block and or help your other work? And how did they kind of conversate to each other? And was it intimidating in the beginning? Because I think this is your first, your debut novel, but your first big fiction piece. And yeah.
No, I don't think I had any idea what I was doing, but I did keep calling the title the headline, which was really embarrassing. Like so many times. I was like, I just don't know what the headline is going to be on this book. But then I finally learned to call it the title, and now I'm a writer.
Now you're a writer.
I did have to.
Now you're a writer.
I think there's like a brutality to editing that I like, just in terms of like you have to change things sometimes quickly, and you have to move things around, and like you can't be precious about it. Like things are cohering into a whole in various ways, and like you could do it this way, or you could do it that way, or you could try this. I think that was super helpful to my writing. Like when I was doing it to myself. I did have to take out a lot of commas and try to ignore the style book. Like, I was like, I had to kind of take out my journalism voice a little bit.
Had you always known you wanted to write a novel or write fiction, or like it just was certainly something that kind of came to you, or like?
Well, you probably know that it's when I had written these personal essays about divorce for the Atlantic, there was like a moment when like a lot of men on 4chan were really mad, but like a lot of other people were reading it, and a couple of publishers asked if I wanted to write a divorce memoir, and I was like, I would rather die than write a divorce memoir.
But
it was like the first time that somebody was like, oh, like, would you like to write a book? And I was like, what? And then I kind of was like, oh, if I did want to, like, what would that be? And I talked to my amazing agent, Bill Clegg, who was like, oh, you should try that. And I was like, oh my God, maybe I will. And so it was like a story about a divorce that's like really not about a divorce. It's just like about why we make choices as an adult.
Oh, totally. Or as a young adult.
Yeah.
Right. And then you have to kind of deal with them.
Yeah.
In mid-adult.
Just like how far back all these things are rooted.
Yeah. Like, and so, well, that's what I mean about the sweater, right? Like,
yes.
It's like, I find it so, I don't know, it's so interesting to me because we start making that sweater pretty young.
Yeah.
Like, and then sometimes it works.
And then people are like, why did you do that? And you're like, I don't know, that's just like the elbow or whatever. Like,
yeah. Like, it's just always how it's been. Like, it's just always how it's been. Like, did you, obviously, I had workshopped like a decent amount because I did my MFA. Like, were you very private about this? Were you very like? I knew you were working on it, but like,
I think I was like very. I mean, Peter obviously read all of it, but I think I was pretty secretive about it because I was like, I don't know, like it might have been terrible.
Really think that it was terrible though.
Well, I didn't know for a while. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to be like, hey guys, I'm writing my first novel. Like, boss. I don't know. Like, that would be a crazy thing to do.
Yeah. So I was talking about another book that was a memoir with someone, Amy Griffin's The Tell, and it also involves like youth abuse. And I got such a weird reaction. Like, it was like about like a benefit and putting it in a gift bag. Like, like it was like, oh, we should put this in the gift bag. And it was like, that book's about abuse. Like, and it was such a strange thing. Like, have you found that people's reactions to the topic, or like that you, like, I don't know, like, it's like, I feel like we live in this weird time around this topic where on the one hand, we've been telling people for years to like, we should talk about this so that people don't feel these things. And then it's also, there's still weirdly like well, that is about this. Like, and it's
Yeah.
like it's interesting. Like, were you nervous to tell people what it was about in the beginning? Or really? Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
for sure. I mean, it's like, I don't know. I think everybody, when you're like, what's your book about? You're like, I don't know, like
Yeah.
feelings. But
Feelings.
yeah, it did seem it did seem hard.
I'm gonna keep saying that now. That's the back flap copy. Feelings in Brooklyn.
So many of them. But I mean, I also like wanted to be like, oh, it's like actually like a really fun book. Like there's lots of funny parts and like happy, like joyful things, and it's like hard to explain that both of those things can.
I actually think it's a very rebellious thing to have a book where you see a person like be a full person with a sense of humor and a sense of sexuality and like kind of moving through life. Like a friend of mine had written this book. It's called When We Make It. It's about like a teen mom. And she was like, I really just wanted to tell people that you don't like walk off a plank and never get seen again. Like you still have life. Like, right. Like, and I think that this is weirdly a similar kind of topic. Like, and so it was like fantastic, like in the sense that she's a whole person that is the, it's not even like it's her driving thought, right? Like it's like, it's a thing that's come back up. And then the time with her mother and the phase of her mother's life is making it a little bit more pertinent. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I really liked writing were like these moments when you're like in a family and like the kid is like shouting about something and like you're thinking about the groceries, but like you're also maybe sexting and like, I don't like all these things are kind of happening at the same time. And like that, the fluidity of that
and the chaos
and the writing
of it
and the
in
character
a good way.
were fun, like layering all those things together. Because I think that is, I mean, maybe not everybody's sexting, but I think
maybe everybody is.
maybe they are. But those parts were really fun to write.
Yeah, no, and they are fun, really, really fun to read. They're really fun to read. And like, actually, you know, and I love, at one point the ex-husband gets a girlfriend and she's just so like, I mean, great. It's like, just, it's really,
she's so happy.
She's so happy. She's so happy. And I loved it. Anyway, we'll take some questions from people. Have you been thinking? Hi. Hi, I'm going to repeat your question because of the live stream. So, yes.
Yes. Well, my question is, I mean, I know you've been edited before because I know you've written before for the magazine and everything, but how was it to be edited?
The question was, you've obviously edited before and been edited the magazine, but how is it to be edited in the novel?
Like,
as a
I
writer?
can dish it out, but can I take it? What do you think? I mean, Sarah McGrath is an amazing editor, and Riverhead's copy editors were all incredible. Yeah, and Bill gave me like huge sort of edits at the beginning of thoughts that were missing or not spelled out. Yeah, mostly it was like really delightful. I was like, I got to be like the center of attention.
Yeah,
and that's like not like normally my experience.
And taking care of, like, it's a very, I think, like, I don't know, I was just telling this to somebody the other day. I was like, I think when you're first writing, it's like very intimidating getting edited because it's seen as like a criticism. And then I think as you evolve into it, it's like you realize like it's not to be overly woo-woo about it, but it's an act of love. Like, it's like, here's where we could take it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I mean, I definitely was like, oh, I know what editing is. And like,
yeah,
that will happen now. And they'll like suggest things.
Yes.
Like,
You're very
loving
being like editor. So I could see you taking it that way. Yes. Yeah. Good question though. Very good question. Others? Hi.
What do you think? Like, I just went to a Motherload event too. Like, do you think it's in conversation with anything like that, or were you having some because of the mother cause or whatever? But do you think it's something else?
I have to just repeat that question. Sorry. No, it's okay. She'd just gone to the Motherload event, and you know, how would you phrase that again? Like, it's
having them both fall on Mother's Day.
Oh,
yeah,
Friday for that, and then this. Oh,
so I'm just curious if you feel in conversation with any of these books on moms.
Oh yeah, do you feel in conversation with any of these books on moms? I know you heard her. I just have to do the live stream.
I haven't read it yet, but I'm very interested in it. I don't know. I mean, I'm not like trying to be in conversation with anything, I think, which is like sort of a ridiculous answer, but I don't know. I try to be like, I don't know what's happening with all those other people. Like, here's the one thing that I'm doing. But I'm sure it is. And like many readers would find lots of connections between I mean, there's so many good books about mothers.
Yeah. I never know how to answer that question, by the way, about being in conversation. just because 90% of the time I hadn't read this one. That's okay. Hi, how are you?
Hi, I sort of responding to your response. What are your favorite depictions of mothers or favorite mother books?
Oh, that's a good one. What are your favorite mother books and depictions of mothers in books?
Well, To the Lighthouse is the easy answer.
Yeah.
And, like, there's a lot of, I think, like, fawning over that book in this book.
Yeah. Oh, there is some fawning over that book. And I think gentleman Ron Charles brought this up and made a
I think maybe
called
he
that
did.
up. Yes. Yes, it was very nice. Yeah. That's a good one. That's a very good one.
But I mean, she also has main character energy, but is lovely and, like, I don't know, fascinating. And
Yeah.
I thought a lot about that book.
Were there other books that you kind of had been thinking about just in general? Like,
I mean, I was reading Proust.
uh-huh.
He loves his mother.
Yeah,
also
he
a lot.
does love his mother.
I wasn't thinking of it as like another book about mothers and daughters, that's for sure. But I mean, I was thinking about it as a book that, like, lets you be like, okay, like, you can write about that light on that surface of that table for, like, 2 pages if you want to, which I found very liberating when I was writing.
Yeah. And then the flashlights, which are so nice to start with. Yeah. Yes, these are good. Other people. Is that a hand or an eager face? It's an eager face. Oh my gosh. Oh yeah. Hi.
So the book starts with young Margaret, but obviously transitions between 2 different timelines. I'm wondering how you thought about chronology and structuring the novel and how intentional those choices were throughout.
Again, repeating live stream. The book starts with young Margaret and then goes to older Margaret. How did you think about the chronology and the whole kind of partitioning of it all?
Yeah, I think I knew that I wanted, like, the grown-up Margaret scene to begin with her watching her children sleep. And then I knew that she was going to be, like, a editor during Me Too. So that put sort of, like, a timestamp on it. And just, like, a thematic, like, that just felt like that was the moment when you had to, like, meet her again. And then I didn't, it's like, it's basically chronological, and then there's, like, flashbacks, and those just seemed, like, necessitated by, like, the structure of the moment or whatever was going on. Like, I don't think I really thought very much about structure. Like, it seemed a pretty simple structure once I had made that time shift.
I actually would.
Do you disagree?
I would disagree, and only to say that I think it's really difficult to talk about these things with a group of people, but, like, I think some weird stuff about writing is instinctual, and I think that you just have really good instinct for story structure, like, that I think is just some kind of weird sixth sense that you have.
Thank you.
That I don't know that I don't think you could explain it to somebody, but I think that it's probably actually a little more because I was like, oh, I forgot there were parts, like, I don't know, there was structural stuff that you just forget because the story is so good, but, like, that makes it make sense. But I think that that's probably one of your preternatural, like, sixth sense editorial gifts.
Maybe. I mean, I do remember being like, something good should happen to her now. Like, I don't know, like, being like, oh, like,
Yeah.
this has been like a rough section. Like,
Yeah.
maybe like some fresh air should happen now.
Yeah,
or
but it's,
something.
like, interesting because, like, I just was thinking about how, like, it just works quite well to start with this innocent time. Whereas, like, there's another argument to be made, like, oh, we should meet her and then know that this happened, and it's much more dark and mysterious. And instead, it starts at this kind of base level of innocence, which I think lets you keep it lighter in other ways.
I did feel. I mean, I thought about that. I was like, do people not like reading about kids? Like, should it start with, like, she's a sexy editor in the city, and, like, then, like, there's a dark secret, and, like, something's revealed, and, like, and I felt like for this particular story, sort of dishonest. I was like,
yeah,
we're just gonna say what, like, this thing that happens to this character, and then, like, the mystery is, like, what she does with it after.
Yeah. That was great. Oh, 2 more questions. That's what we have time for. Oh, these have been so good. Don't stop now. I'm going to be an auctioneer in my next career. Oh, okay. Hi.
So you talked earlier about how you'll write a phrase, readers can take it differently, sure. But is there kind of a feeling or a thought that you hope your readers walk away from reading your book with?
The paraphrase will be, is there a feeling or a thought you hope that readers will leave your book with?
Oh, that's such a nice question. I guess, I don't know, one of the things is like that sense of profusion, like that, like, and many things are possible at once, that like things aren't permanent. That like, I don't know, this character can be like a lot of different versions of herself. I don't know, I think that's like a happy thing to take away from it.
I think it's the fun thing that a novel lets you do also, which is that it doesn't have to have certainty.
Yeah.
Right? Like, yeah, like it's like the opposite of the other work, like where it needs to be rooted in all certainty. And this is like, there's a lot, like ambivalence is kind of awesome.
Yeah.
Not ambivalence about the work,
No,
but like
for sure.
like mixed,
I think that's the
mixed
right
response is kind of awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like there are different forms for different things. Like it was very liberating to be like, I don't know what she feels exactly about this.
Yeah, yeah. And people will read it differently.
Yeah,
And
feelings,
that's kind of great.
why,
Feelings. Yeah, feelings. That's what it's about. Oh, good question. One last one. Okay.
Should we talk about Tracy Anderson? So she has a great feature coming up in the next print mag.
It's like slowly maybe lose my mind, but yes, it's thank you. And you've done a wonderful job editing it and your story structure. I want to just congratulate you. I know you worked very hard, but also it's like it reads effortlessly. It's such beautiful prose. It's an awesome story. I know it's the first of many, many books, and I'm so happy for you.
I'm so grateful for tonight and also for, you know, everything that came before and all the advice and friendship you've given me. And thank you everybody for coming.
Yes, thank you. And Honor will be signing books in the front. Thank you so much.
Thank you again. Thank you everyone for coming out. Thanks to everyone who asked questions. Thank you, Xochitl, for moderating such a great conversation. And thank you, Honor, for celebrating this with us. So, yes, a few quick reminders before we wrap up and all head home. If you're still with us on the live stream, you can buy a copy by clicking the link in the live stream description. For those of you with us tonight, if you haven't gotten a copy yet, we have some extras available for purchase at the table where you checked in. We also have some copies of both of Xochitl's novels, which are fantastic if you haven't read them yet. Honor will be around to sign and personalize your books at the alcove where my coworkers are now pointing to. Yes, thank you. We've got a long way to bring her. So I'm going to ask that you all sit tight as we get her settled back there. And then please make sure to grab all of your personal belongings with you, line up down the center aisle, and we will be moving chairs out of the way. Yeah, that's all. Thank you all again. Let's give these two one last round of applause.
We're like reverse walking.